Okay, the third video is using the login form flash file we created earlier and the XML file that we've also created, and we're going to be adding some actions and linking it up. So we're going to do our actions layer, bring this up, so what we're going to do is add in these before the stop command. So first step, we're going to add a variable to store the username that gets typed into the box, which side it actually gets loaded from the file, and the password. And we're going to leave those sort of set to null, blank at the moment. We also need another variable for setting up the XML. We're going to call this my XML. You can obviously call it everything, and we're going to force it to be the type XML, and we're going to make a new one. So this basically creates an empty object of type XML. And call this so that we can load our files into it. Now, often the XML files, they're set out with lots of white space in them, text, bits of information, so we don't want to actually have that. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to show an example of how that sort of works. I'll open, so it gets rid of all the spaces, all the other formatting, and just takes out the key information that we're actually looking for. This one with the data, if we had extra spaces, it'll get rid of all that and only just show just the keywords that we're looking for. So we're going to go ignore white, is assigned to true, so that will ignore any white space. Now we need to deal with what's going to happen if we load it. So there's functions called onload, so this is when Flash starts to load a piece of information. We want to run a function. Function is a group of instructions, and if it is a success, we're going to give it that piece of information. So if it is a success, we want to do this, otherwise we're going to do something else. So if it's a success, basically if it can find the file, we need to basically store the username and store the password. And we need to actually get this from the XML. This is where it gets really confusing. So we're going to go my XML, so our XML file, we're going to dot first child, so that gets the first child object, so that gets app. If you actually look at these, you could think about them in terms of a hierarchy. So you got the first child that knows the users, so that's the first child of that. If I had another one down here, that would be considered the second child, but the first child always just gets the first item that's written after this first set of brackets. So my XML first child gets the app, next one is going to get the users, we want to go through and get, so first child, get the app, first child, so with first child goes through, we've now got the users. Now we're going to get child nodes at position 0, which is the first one. Remember computers, we start counting at 0. Get the first one, so the very first list. And we can get attributes. Attributes are these little bits here, so like name and password. So what's quite nice is all I have to do is get that section, make that bigger. Attributes dot name will get the username, and as it's in the same syntax, in the same area, so this time I want to get password, so that will go and save my username and password in there. So that is all we have to do for basically loading the information. Okay, so we've told the XML file what we want to happen when we click on load. Now what we actually need to do is load the file into it. So we go myXML load. Note, all brackets sort of go in pairs. Open bracket, closing bracket. There's also opening speech marks and closing speech marks. So I've gone and loaded all the information into it. So that is now all working. What we're going to do, go back onto this. I need to give my button an instance name so I can work with it. Always good to give these like proper names. So this one's called login_button. And so now I need to give a bit of code to do something if the button is pressed. So I've got the name of the button. So what I want to happen when it's pressed, I've got an instruction I want to do. So it's going to be another function. So if the username, if we want to make sure it's equal to something, we use 2 equals. And what we can do is go through and get our information from it. So what I need to do is work out what I called these boxes. So I had username field. So it's equal to username field. Text gets the text in there. And password is equal to password field. Text. Okay, so now go and compare those two. This will only happen if the username is correct and the password is correct. And what we want it to then do is go to and play. We need to make sure we choose the correct name of the scene. So this one's called, we want it to go to correct login. And we're going to go to frame 1. If it's not correct, we're going to go to incorrect login. Okay. So that will go through and run it. So we now do type in something that's not correct, didn't work.